Hello, everybody. Welcome to Shadow at Night. It's Friday, April the 11th, 2025. Mo DeCosse was the first commenter tonight. He makes a point of saying first. See, look, this first, he says right there, first. Ah! And so, Mo, I wanted to congratulate you on being first. It's not like I usually notice that, but tonight, because you made a point of it, and maybe you've been striving to be first for the past few weeks, I don't know, but congratulations on being the very first comment in the stream tonight on Facebook. Hello, Michael in Brampton. Linda's watching in Trenton on Facebook. Hello, Mo in Somerset, Manitoba. Janet's watching in Winnipeg. Hello, Kathy in Bothwell, Ontario. Jeannie in Calgary. Beulah's watching in Innisfail, Alberta. Hello, Regina in Arizona. Bonnie Jean's watching in Kenora, Ontario tonight. Hello, Lance and Linda watching in Ajax. Tony is watching on X from Calgary. Hello, Debbie in Oak Bank. Chantel Cooper is watching tonight on Twitch. On Twitch? Yep. We've got a Twitch viewer. That's wild. Hello, Cheryl and Linda in Saskatchewan, and Carla and Ellen, Mike, Judy and Powell River. No matter where you're watching from or what you're watching on, don't forget to like and share. Hello, Rumble, Fart Knockin' Pooh Head, Trifia, Proton Mail, Cosford, Stump Slayer, Springer Dinger, Nutsy, Diamos, Lone Arnie. Don't forget to like and share, you guys. Get it out there to as many people as you possibly can. You might notice I'm wearing a hat tonight. It's the new hat from the Shadow at Night line, and I'm not exactly happy with it. It didn't turn out the way I wanted it to, but it's a comfortable hat. It says Shadow at Night on the front and then live there in the blue, as you can see, but the blue doesn't really jump out at you. So I may have to remodel this. Last night, we had a winner of the Shadow at Night mug. There it is there. Let me show you here. Here's what it looks like, the Shadow at Night mug. So there's the one side, And then you guys are probably seeing it backwards. And then here on the other side, it says Truth Matters. And the winner was Giselle Gillis of Gibsons, British Columbia. Hello, Giselle, if you're watching right now. We're showing this documentary in 10 parts during the extension for the last week or so. It's called Europa, The Last Battle. And I had just started part 6 last night. Called Giselle to congratulate her, ask her if she wanted the mug or the hat. And you know what she said to me? Aside from I want the mug, she said, Shadow, how am I supposed to watch this if you're interrupting me with a phone call? The first thing she said, congratulations, Giselle. We'll do another giveaway next week of either a mug or a hat, and it's only for all access members at shadowdavis.com. So if you want to, and they're not for sale yet, they may be in the next couple of months, but for now, we're only giving them away to all access members at shadowdavis.com. You can go and become a member for like $12 a month, or you can pay for the whole year if you want to. Whatever, you get all the extra content, and you have a chance at winning some of this this pretty cool merch that I'm slapping together right now. And when I say that, I mean it literally. I'm not a designer. I'm just doing it because people kept asking me to, and I wanted to get them off my back. The Shadow at Night live stream, as always, is brought to you by nanosilver.com.
Several natural health benefits, and it's been used for hundreds of years for health and healing. That's the main reason they made silverware from silver. But seriously, this Nano Silver from Silverceuticals is the best and safest silver you can find. There are hundreds of studies and reports on it. I've read some of the studies myself, and it's mind-blowing. One of the things that sets Silverceuticals apart is that it washes out of your body in 24 hours. No silver buildup and no turning blue. And it won't even harm the good bacteria your body needs. It's so effective they can use very small concentrations of silver, like 10 and 32 parts per million, and still outperform other silvers that have up to 3,000 parts per million. It's safer and more effective at the same time. It is an incredibly small particle that is small enough to work through your body, but big enough not to fall out of suspension. They infuse it into almost all of their products. It works in facial serums, toothpaste, gels, and even gummies that work to help your immune system.
So I had a brief chat with Kev from Kevin and Anna, Canada Nano Silver. By the way, call them 204-808-9292 if you're interested in any of these awesome products. Check out the website as well, CanadaNanoSilver.com. And he said, what a great day they had. First day at the Yorkton Spring Expo at Gallagher Center in Yorkton. It closed down at 7 o'clock tomorrow, 10 a.m. till 7 p.m., and then Sunday from 10 till 4. And they're giving away a basket of their items with every purchase. So if you made a purchase today, you're planning to make a purchase tomorrow at the Yorkton Spring Expo or on Sunday, you'll be eligible to win this huge basket of goodies from CanadaNanoSilver.com. Again, that is CanadaNanoSilver.com. All right. Remember a couple of weeks ago, I think the first time I brought it up, I was saying that these rallies are big, but they're not as big as the Conservatives or the Liberals, for that matter, are making them out to be. For example, in Winnipeg, and this is the only one I can speak on with authority because I was there, not inside, but I was outside, and I saw a lot of people lined up. They were saying it was 3,500 people. I say more like maybe 1,500, 2,000 tops. All political parties pad their numbers. They all do. And so the CBC thought, you know what? We're going to go and count. Because of that interaction, I'm sure, that Poilievre had with a reporter regarding the size matter, the crowds that they were getting at these rallies. So here's what they had to say. Liberals and Conservatives said their rallies drew thousands. We decided to count. Come on, Mark Carney. Give me a break. Hand-counted images of rallies yield significantly smaller numbers, the CBC says. And again, this is no surprise, but the size of the crowds for political rallies, at least on the Conservative side, does seem to be well above average. I mean, when was a political rally ever a thing that you went to? I don't recall ever going to a political rally except for a couple of weeks ago. Political campaigns may be significantly off base when it comes to the number of people they say are present at campaign rallies across the country. A CBC News investigation shows. Investigation. Like they sent somebody to a rally. 1, 2, 3, 4. That is hard-hitting journalism, baby. How is the media trying to suppress public opinion, public sentiment. How are they doing that? We're going to explore that a little bit later on in the show. Both conservatives and liberals have held major rallies since the beginning of the federal election, with the conservatives in particular emphasizing the size of their events. CBC News' visual investigations team, good Lord, hand-counted people and images taken at 4 rallies across the country. Conservative rallies in Surrey, BC, near Edmonton, liberal events in Toronto and Richmond. The investigation, including expert analysis by crowd scientists, shows the actual number of people attending those rallies was likely far fewer than the campaigns published on social media or reported to journalists at the events. The Conservatives claimed the Edmonton rally was attended by 15,000 people. For example, CBC News counted roughly 1,558 in one panorama photo shared by the campaign. Again, you cannot tell from photos. You have to be there in person to see it. Great investigation, CBC News. Even assuming that a large number of attendees were missed due to perspective or obstruction, 15,000 is not possible, according to G. Keith Still, an expert in crowd dynamics and safety, who is a visiting academic, a professor of crowd science at the University of Suffolk. CBC News asked Still to analyze the events. His hand counts were similar to our team's for all 4 events. Still noted that hand counts carry a margin of error of 5%. What 15,000 looks like? Well, yeah, right? I mean, it's a hockey game. That's the arena in Winnipeg where the Jets play. It's called Canada Life Center. Maximum capacity is 15,321. And similarly, the Liberals said their rally in Richmond had 2,000 people in the main room. CBC News' count, corroborated by Still, puts the number closer to 800. The manual count, as with the other rallies, was done by dividing images into grids and tallying the heads possible. Look, you can't tell from photos. I don't care what anybody says. You simply can't, because one photo cannot capture the entire facility. It just can't. You're going to miss the people behind you. You're going to miss the people in the corners. You're going to miss the people in the back, the hallway, the ones outside who couldn't get in. I mean, I totally understand what they're trying to do there, but you got to be there and see it with your own eyeballs, or else you simply cannot guesstimate. And it's scientific. No, it's not. You're not seeing the whole thing. The pleb, or maybe right blend, was at the Pierre Poilievre rally in Windsor earlier today, and here's what that looked like a couple of hours before the doors opened.
All right, we're 2 hours here before the event. Look at this lineup of people waiting to get in. And the cars are just rolling in off the street. This rally here in Windsor is going to be absolutely huge. Hello. What's up? What's up? Yeah, I'm here. Look at this lineup. Crazy. Yeah.
All right, again, people are excited to be there. It didn't look like it was that huge. Windsor is a city of roughly 300,000, and it's largely voted NDP for the last 100 years or so, or since the NDP has been a party. That's where Windsor goes when they place their votes. So you wouldn't expect a conservative rally in Windsor to be that big. But nonetheless, there are hundreds of people there, it looks like. Would you consider that story by the CBC to be an attempt at suppressing public sentiment? Yeah, I think so. They're trying to dampen the enthusiasm of the electorate. And again, we'll give you better examples of that as we continue with the show here. Let's throw this up on the screen. Ryan Alford says in the National Post that Pierre, you know how you've been hearing for the past year, Poilievre won't get a security clearance. How can he be the prime minister if he won't get a security clearance? How does he know who's infiltrated? Well, he's already got security clearance of a certain level through CSIS because he's a member of the King's Privy Council, and also he was a former minister in the government. You have to have a certain clearance level to attain that position, or vice versa. So Alfred here says Poilievre has been vindicated for refusing the security clearance. Had the Conservative leader gone through with it, he could have faced legal consequences for his comments on Chinese interference in this election. Oh, yes. Very, very, very interesting thought. In an incident last month that may soon be considered ominous foreshadowing, Mark Carney was pressed by the media about his financial holdings and the ethical conundrums that they present. To change the subject, Carney boasted about his recently acquired security clearance and claimed it was irresponsible for the leader of the opposition not to obtain one himself. This criticism flirted with the conspiracy theory that Pierre Poilievre would fail a background check, which ignores the fact that Poilievre received security clearance after becoming a cabinet minister in 2013. Demonstrating that there had been no concerns by security and intelligence officials about his loyalty to Canada or compromising foreign connections. Unlike other party leaders, Poilievre declined the offer to be cleared in order to view an unredacted National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians (NSICOP) report on foreign electoral interference, which contained the names of parliamentarians alleged to be witting or semi-witting accomplices. And just as a quick aside here, how on earth can you be a semi or unwitting accomplice of a hostile foreign entity? You got to be dumb. Hey, what's with all these Chinese people following me around everywhere, asking for things, telling me I'm great? I don't know them. Like what? How do you not know that you're being used somehow? That's an absolutely ridiculous idea. So, where was I? I guess maybe the thing scrolled down on its own here. Oh, said it. Yeah, right. He noted that doing so would only lead to some breadcrumbs of intel and then being told you can't talk about any of this stuff anymore. That's what Poilievre said. Later, his office reiterated any of this stuff anymore. You can't talk about it. Sorry. Well, what the heck? I haven't been drinking or anything. This is water, I assure you, in my Shadow at Night mug. Later, his office reiterated that unlike those party leaders who were willing to limit their ability to hold the government to account on important issues of national security, Mr. Poilievre will not be gagged. After it came to light that Liberal MP Paul Chang had suggested that one of the Chinese Communist Party, that's Communist Party. This says community. I got it right. Communist Party's most repressive laws should be enforced on Canadian soil, urging his constituents to turn another candidate over to the Chinese consulate in exchange for a bounty. Poilievre's refusal to be briefed and therefore retain his ability to speak freely would seem to be the correct choice. Owing to his lack of access to classified information, Poilievre was free to observe the Liberal Party had been reticent to stand up to a foreign hostile regime. The NSICOP foreign interference report had been redacted to obscure privileged information that, in its unclassified summary, assessed that the PRC believes that its relationship with some members of parliament rests on a quid pro quo that any member's engagement with the PRC will result in the PRC mobilizing its network in the members' favor. Poilievre had been cleared to read the unredacted report, which would have entailed him promising not to reveal special operational information. And what he had read had included the actions of PRC proxies. Poilievre's criticisms about the unwillingness of the Liberal government to take these networks seriously could lead to allegations that he had committed an offense under Section 13 of the Security of Information Act, which carries with it a threat of up to 14 years in prison. In other words, he might have learned the details of lax responses to the CCP's influence operations earlier, but he would have been prevented from speaking to Canadians on the topic when it mattered the most. And we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. Sam Cooper has unveiled some more stuff about the Liberal Party being compromised by high-level Chinese officials. Also, the highest levels of the BC government and a Trudeau-appointed senator. Remember I told you yesterday that Mark Carney was taking today off from the campaign trail. He was going to have a cabinet meeting to discuss the Trump problem. So all of the reporters gathered outside the cabinet meeting room in the House of Commons in Ottawa earlier today, expecting to hear something from Mark Carney. And instead, this is what they got. Watch.
Well, that's all for now. Thank you.
Okay. reporters trying to get more questions in and hoping answers will come, but very few did.
I am struck by his not taking questions because he may have taken himself off the campaign trail, but there is still an election going on.
I'm not talking to you about anything we talked about that has to do with Canada. I'm unelected and don't have to. I haven't got the time for you. That's how it came off. Mark Carney, it appears, would also continue on or try to somehow reconstitute Bill C-63. This is the end of the trifecta of censorship bills the previous Trudeau Liberal government had implemented. C-11, C-18, C-63 would have been, and still may be, the bill that could put you in jail for insulting somebody online for 10 years or pay a $20,000 fine. Yeah. And the people who complain about it, the people who report this stuff, can remain anonymous forever. You're not allowed to face your accuser in this situation. Here is Mark Carney talking about online hate, about Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, and blaming the internet.
Fortunately, the rising tide of hatred online is overflowing onto our streets. Violence and intimidation have no place in Canada. Anti-Semitism and Islamophobia must be denounced in the strongest possible terms. And I am appalled by the horrific incidents and numerous incidents in our country in recent years. Far too many violent Islamophobic attacks on mosques and other places of worship and community centers across this city and across this country.
Now, in that particular speech, he doesn't go as far as saying we will make sure to ban the internet or seriously limit the internet so that Islamophobia and anti-Semitism and anti-racial hate can never appear. But you can imagine that's the direction he's going, considering that's what they do in Europe, where his best buddies are. So we're going to stay on top of that one. Mark Carney also, now this is, I found this to be incredibly egotistical. Remember the other day when he said, and President Trump and I have agreed to meet after the election to decide exactly how our trade relations are going to work out, just assuming that he was going to win the election. And then the next day he backpedaled and said, whoever wins the election will sit down with President Trump and try to work out some arrangement. Well, now, Carney, according to the National Post, is leaving instructions to help the next government prepare for Trump. What? I'm sure if the Conservatives win, they're going to want to do it on their own. But maybe these instructions are for somebody else. Carney and Donald Trump have agreed to start negotiations on a new deal after the Canadian election. Mark Carney says his cabinet has left instructions for officials to help prepare the next government for upcoming negotiations with Donald Trump's administration. Hang on, let me shut this down here before it starts playing on its own. Okay. Done. So today, Carney put his election campaign on hold, as I was saying, for the third time in 3 weeks to convene, trying to look important. That's all this is. I'm trying to look prime ministerial. I'm taking valuable time off the campaign trail because Canada needs me. That's how it comes off to me. I can't believe there's people out there voting Liberal thinking this guy is the be-all and end-all. How do they not see the arrogance? This is just an older, smarter, maybe, version of Justin Trudeau. That's all this is. So he puts his campaign on hold for the third time in 3 weeks to convene a federal Canada-U.S. relations cabinet meeting in Ottawa. After the meeting, I'm not calling him the prime minister. There's people, these reporters, the prime minister. No. To me, he's just some dude called Mark Carney who's a banker. I'm not calling him the prime minister. He has no mandate. Carney told reporters the meeting was to discuss the whirlwind of tariff announcements by the United States over the past week. He said, the federal government has also begun preparing negotiations for a new trade and security agreement with the U.S. after the election on April 28th. We left instructions for officials to ensure that the next government, whichever government Canadians choose, is very, very, very important to include that, will be in the best possible position for negotiations with the United States, which, as the president and I have agreed, will begin from the start of May. He did not take questions, as I showed you earlier. In French, he bumbled that the instructions included preparing regulations, statistics, and ways to respond to the U.S. administration in order to ensure effective negotiations. So the Conservatives are going to come in and go, okay, thanks, Mark. That's great. Thanks very much for that. Like, how is this even a freaking story? The media, what they're trying to do is fill space here. During his first, and then they fill in with something that happened 2 weeks ago. The media is just deplorable in this country. Carney said the president and he agreed that both countries should begin. Whatever. I mean, we don't even need to see the rest of that. This is an interesting story we're going to get to in just a second, but I want to play this for you. This came out a couple of days ago. This is that Globe and Mail reporter talking to Mark Carney about him meeting with that Chinese lobby group during the Liberal leadership race, and then talking about the replacement candidate he chose in Markham Unionville in Toronto. Let's watch this again.
Hi, Judah Annalise, Globe and Mail. My colleagues have a story today about a Liberal candidate's relations with China-friendly groups and a meeting that you also held with a pro-Beijing group. So my question is, why did you meet with this pro-Beijing group, Jiangsu Commerce Council of Canada? And is the party okay with the fact that Liberal candidate Peter Yun has been so close with the Chinese consulate and China-friendly groups, given the public inquiry into foreign interference, says that this is a tactic China uses to exert influence?
Okay, well, I'm sorry, but you can't believe everything you read in the Globe and Mail.
Fake news.
So in your question, and I guess in the article in question, you said I had a meeting with whatever your term was, Beijing group. I've never heard of this group, okay? Never heard of this group. Certainly didn't have a set-up meeting with this group. Full stop.
Okay, full stop. Even though there's photos of you meeting with not one member of this group, but 7 of them. And it was right on their website. By the way, the Liberal Party called that group, that Chinese lobby group, which is very closely tied to Beijing and the PRC, and told them to take down the photos of Carney on their website and to take down the story that they'd had a meeting with him. The Liberal Party actually did that. Let's continue.
Check your sources before you write things like that, okay? Or your colleagues do. I'm a politician. I go to events where there are hundreds and thousands over the course of a day of different people there. That is not a meeting. If somebody happens to be in the room, takes a picture with me, that's not a meeting, okay? First point. Secondly, with respect to Mr. Yun, this is a person who has served his community for decades. This is a person who's deputy commissioner of the police, okay? A person in discharge of those responsibilities meets with a variety of community groups in the community because that's his job. That's his responsibility. We're proud to have him as a candidate, and I honor his service, including on today. Thank you.
All right. You honor his service. Peter Yun is the candidate's name, by the way. Peter Yun, former high-level police officer in Toronto. So let's throw this up. No, wait, let's not throw that up just yet. This is Bob Fife, who is a veteran reporter, been with the Globe and Mail for years and years and years and years and years. He was on a CBC panel today.
What's your reaction to what Carney said today in the statement from the party?
Well, first of all, we never said that there was a meeting. We said that this organization met him, and according to their website, they had an in-depth discussion. Mm-hmm. That's the story, and which, by the way, that wasn't the focus of the story. The focus of the story is on the Liberal candidate in the riding that was replaced by another Liberal
Etobicoke
MP.
North,
No, it's
Union Markham.
Markham Union.
Yeah, sorry, my apologies.
And this man named Peter Yun is a former deputy police chief. We checked him out, and he is being connected attracted to Beijing-friendly organizations, including this organization who met with Mr. Carney. They echo and repeat the lines of the Chinese Communist Party. The other groups that Mr. Yen met with were the Chinese Freemasons, which talks about annexation of Taiwan. He's been celebrated and had many meetings with the Chinese consulate, which we now know from the public inquiry into foreign interference that the Chinese consulate is the key organizing body for all of these proxy groups that try to influence politicians. So that was the point of our story. But here's the thing I want to talk about, and I'm glad Mr. Carney raised this, because here's the reason why. This same group, if you go to the website, after they met him, they wrote a laudatory thing about how great Mark Carney is, how great he is and going to improve Chinese-Canadian relations. What did we find out on Monday? The site committee, which looks into federal election interference, said that WeChat and China has been trying to mold public opinion involving Mr. Carney. What are they molding? Nice things about him, what a tough guy he is, how he can take on the Americans. So I guess the point here is, has anybody learned anything from the foreign interference inquiry or not? This is the strategy of China to try to influence no matter which political party you are. And rather than trying to attack the media, why doesn't he just say, look, we have to do a better job of dealing with these kind of organizations that are trying to influence politicians?
Why doesn't he say that? Because then he'd be admitting that his party is influenced by Chinese officials. Heaven forbid they should ever admit that, especially during an election campaign. Come on, Bob, what are you, crazy? They haven't admitted it yet. As a matter of fact, that Ho Commission whitewashed everything. Every single thing. And we knew they would, just like every Trudeau-appointed commission has in the past 10 years. So here's another one from the National Post. They've been doing a good job, I got to say, the last couple of days. There's a couple of wonky ones, but this is not bad. Liberal candidate who replaced Paul Chang, and again, his name is Peter Jung, attended Chinese military parade in 2015. Such trips are a classic tactic of Beijing to woo ethnic Chinese leaders and other key foreigners, experts say. So let's read a little bit of this one. There he is there. More evidence has surfaced of friendly ties between the Chinese government and the Liberal candidate who replaced an incumbent criticized for his own approach to China. So let's replace one Chinese spy with another Chinese spy. And then, of course, we're not going to admit it. And we're going to whitewash it. I'm glad the left-wing corporate media has been at least trying to stay on top of this, and they need to get to the bottom of it. Never mind the news cycle ending. Never mind looking for some fresh story. This is what they have to dig into. What baffles me is, why don't they talk to Sam Cooper? This is the authority on Chinese interference in Canada. They never mention Sam. Peter Yun, the party's newly minted nominee in a Toronto area riding, attended a massive military parade and show of martial strength in Beijing a decade ago at the invitation of a Chinese agency dedicated to influencing ethnic Chinese in other countries. The former Toronto deputy police chief, how he got that high in the organization is mind-boggling. And about 75 other overseas Chinese from Canada were put up in a Beijing hotel, principally to watch a parade marking the 70th anniversary of the defeat of Japan in the Second World War. Stories from Chinese language media indicate. Another Canadian invited to the event, who asked not to be named because of the sensitivity of the issue, confirmed in an interview that Yun was among the attendees who stayed at the Doubletree Hilton and sat on bleachers in Tiananmen Square to watch the parade pass by. The Canadians' accommodation and food were covered by the Chinese, said the person who paid for his own airfare to Beijing and said others may have too. Canadian delegates also attended other events during the trip, including the awarding of medals to elderly veterans of the war, according to news stories. Such trips are a classic tactic of Beijing to woo ethnic Chinese leaders and other key foreigners said Chick Kwan of the Toronto Association for Democracy in China. That tells you all you need to know about Chinese interference in our society, he said. Make them feel important, make them feel honored, then they'll go home and do your bidding for you. That's human nature 101. Mwah. Speaking of Chinese interference, we're going to get to this in just a second with a story from Sam Cooper in the Bureau on Substack. This one comes from Global News. David Eby directs the BC government to scrap, he's still on the elbows up parade. David Eby, I guess, didn't get the memo. He has directed the BC government to scrap U.S. contracts where viable amid Trump trade war. Whoop, what the heck happened there? Never mind. We don't need that story because we've got this one. Keeping in mind what David Eby just decided to do. We're not going to go into detail about that. He's going to try and cancel U.S. contracts whenever viable. All right. He's instructed his government, the bureaucracy of BC, to do that. So the headline on this story from the Bureau, again, Sam Cooper, written yesterday. Diaspora researchers, that's the Chinese diaspora, link China's intelligence and elite influence arms to the BC government. So is it really China behind this? Because remember, the only two countries who have retaliated against Donald Trump's tariffs are China and Canada. Did China instruct Canada to retaliate? Or did it just work out well for the Liberals to try and take a hold of that as the way to campaign? Campaign against Donald Trump and not Poilievre because you can't win that one. Maybe it's a little from column A and a little from column B. And there's also a Trudeau-appointed senator in there. So let's dig into this story here. Let's look at the connections the guy makes. That's incredible. I'm not sure if you guys follow Sam on the Bureau.news, but if you don't, then you probably should. A powerful new investigative map released by diaspora researchers traces political ties reaching from the Chinese Communist Party controlled intelligence networks to the highest levels of British Columbia's government. The visual expose centers on Senator Yun Pao Wu and his pivotal role in welcoming Chinese state-linked entities into Canadian institutions, an effort that resonates in a secretly recorded 2020 meeting obtained by the Bureau, in which Wu assured United Front figures he would help shield them from critical scrutiny. Oh my God. These same United Front entities have been credited by Beijing for their role in promoting Chinese Canadian candidates during federal election campaigns. Wu was appointed to the Senate by Justin Trudeau in 2016 with an official announcement citing his work with the same entities now identified by diaspora researchers as Chinese-influenced trade lobbies. And once again, do you think Donald Trump doesn't know how much China controls Canadian bureaucracy, politicians, institutions? Of course he does. The map, titled From Ottawa to Victoria, is part of the ongoing Dotting the Map series from Canadian Friends of Hong Kong, and found in translation two diaspora-led civil society groups built from open source records. The map draws direct lines between United Front-aligned business, political, and media organizations and prominent Canadian leaders, including Senator Wu, former BC Liberal Premier Christy Clark, ex-Minister Teresa Watt, Premier David Eby's advisor Ding Gu, or Gao, and Rise Media journalists. Wow! Whoa. That's insane. The researchers caution that no individual named in their report is alleged to be, again, knowingly involved in Chinese influence activities. Again, how can you not be knowingly involved? You got to suspect something. You know that feeling you get when there's somebody behind you and you turn your head and there's somebody behind you? It's a feeling. You know it. Your gut tells you this stuff. Rather, the mapping effort is designed to educate voters by highlighting verified affiliations to Chinese state or military-linked organizations. Rise Media, as reported by the Bureau, played a key role in supporting Mark Carney's current Liberal candidate, Parm Baines, in the 2021 contest, in which Baines upset Conservative incumbent Kenny Chu. That Richmond riding is one of the top 3 examples of Chinese election interference overturning Conservative candidates, according to former Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole. At the center of the new dotting the map diagram is Senator Wu, shown helping open pathways for China Poly Group, a state conglomerate tied to the People's Liberation Army, and Polyculture, its cultural diplomacy arm. The map shows that under the Liberal Christy Clark government, with Wu's active involvement, British Columbia approved multi-million-dollar partnerships with numerous shadowy Chinese entities via HQ Vancouver, a Canadian public-private entity created to draw foreign investment into Canada. Holy crap. Wu's name is also linked through board roles and event partnerships to the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada and various CCP-aligned think tanks, including those tied through joint programming to the International Liaison Department, a CCP foreign intelligence arm. This is sick. According to the map, Wu co-organized a 2010 event in Canada with Henry Hugh Wang, founder of the Center for China and Globalization, a think tank under the ILD that directly advises the Chinese State Council. Wang and Wu, I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh. Ever see that movie Murder by Death? It's an oldie, goes back to the 70s, Peter Sellers. It's just what this reminded me of. Anyway, Wang and Wu co-wrote articles and maintained overt links through the Asia Pacific Foundation during Wu's tenure as president and CEO. According to political scientist Anne-Marie Brady, the ILD is tasked with gathering intelligence on foreign politicians and political parties and developing asset relations with them. In Justin Trudeau's October 2016 appointment notice, Wu is credited for works including as president and CEO of the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada from 2005 to 2014. He led a major expansion of the organization and spearheaded the National Conversation on Asia, a 3-year cross-Canada campaign to highlight the growing importance of Asia in the world and for Canada. Currently, he serves as president of HQ Vancouver, a public-private partnership established to promote British Columbia as a head office location for global firms. Don't forget, China is very closely tied with Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum. And Mark Carney, for that matter. Very closely tied. This is that new geopolitical structure that we've been talking about. Europe aligning with China. I think that's what's going on right now. And they're going to paint everybody else, the United States, Russia, and anybody who opposes them, as the axis of evil. According to this map, Teresa Watt, while serving as a minister in Christy Clark's Liberal government, extended Belt and Road cooperation to BC, joined Huawei and a local telecom firm in 5G research initiatives, participated in multiple PRC-affiliated delegations, and came from a background in Chinese state-linked media. She is also listed as having facilitated the involvement of Chinese real estate tycoons in provincial-level discussions on infrastructure and housing. Remember, for years, reporters were hounding Justin Trudeau. Hey, you're going to ban Huawei? You're going to ban 5G, Huawei 5G? When the United States did it years before? Yeah, we'll look into that. We'll look into that. I'm not sure if they ever did. I don't think so. The map identifies Ding Gao, founder of the Canada Committee 100 Society, CCS 100, as a critical node. Gao is shown as a journalist from Shanghai who transitioned into a leadership role in BC Chinese language media and political mobilization. As previously reported by the Bureau in December of 2021, then Attorney General David Eby approved a $20,000 provincial grant to CCS 100, citing its anti-racism and Chinese diaspora engagement goals. The grant was awarded while Gao served as a Chinese community advisor to Eby. A February 2021 report from a Chinese Communist Party organ cited CCS 100 among several Canadian groups praised for voter education, mobilization, and fundraising efforts during the 2019 election cycle. Premier Eby also awarded Ding Gao the King Charles III Coronation Medal the researchers found. Kenny Zhang, also named in the map, is shown occupying a dual role as a former executive of HQ Vancouver and head researcher with Ding Gao's CCS 100. He was affiliated with Rise Media, which promoted Liberal candidate Parm Bains over MP Kenny Chiu during the 2021 federal election campaign. And Zhang was also awarded this King Charles III Coronation Medal by Senator Yun Pao Wu. Wow. The Bureau's publication of the Wu tape forms part of the evidentiary spine of the researchers' latest map. All three, Ding Gao, Kenny Zhang, and Senator Yun Pao Wu, were present in this groundbreaking piece of evidence. In the May 2020 recording, Senator Wu tells CCS 100 leaders, including Ding Gao, that he will help protect their organizations from scrutiny in Canadian public discourse, including inside Parliament. The remote online meeting, captured on audio and visual files held by the Bureau, included figures tied to the United Front, linked institutions, and media outlets aligned with PRC narratives. In the meeting, Wu states, whether you belong to an organization that happens to be listed as a United Front organization should not be a litmus test. He continues, I am fighting very hard against this type of criticism. The statements closely mirror the PRC's own foreign messaging, which frequently defends its overseas political networks as benign civic or cultural organizations. When the Bureau sent detailed questions to Senator Wu regarding the recording, Wu advised that questions should be directed to the Hogue Commission, who will cover it up. The Bureau also provided the tape-recorded evidence to CSIS and asked the service to comment on whether the statements are relevant to Wu's intervener status in the Hogue Commission. Individuals purposefully aligning themselves with the United Front Work Department, designated organizations, should understand its ongoing actions targeting members of Canadian communities with harassment, manipulation, or intimidation, spokesman Eric Balsam wrote in a statement that didn't name Senator Wu. The PRC uses its UFWD in Canada and around the world to stifle criticism and manipulate Canadian communities. These activities constitute a threat to Canada's sovereignty and to the safety of Canadians. The researchers' findings meant to educate voters during a Canadian election in which Mark Carney has already been boosted by disinformation from elite Chinese Communist Party intelligence entities, take on added significance in light of sections of the map that link Senator Wu, the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada, and affiliated organizations to the International Liaison Department. The ILD is a powerful arm of the Chinese Communist Party that experts identify as a covert influence and foreign intelligence agency operating globally on behalf of Beijing's political interests. Wow. This is insane. It goes deep, right? In his 2022 book, Spies and Lies, How China's Greatest Covert Operations Fooled the World, author and analyst Alex Joske details how the ILD has historically conducted clandestine activities aimed at shaping foreign perceptions and policymaking in favor of the Chinese Communist Party. His research shows the department plays a central role in executing covert influence operations targeting political, business, and academic elites abroad. Meanwhile, as previously reported by the Bureau, a report that praised Premier David Eby's advisor Ding Gao for helping mobilize Chinese Canadian voters in 2019 also highlighted the importance of the Liberal Party leaders' outreach to the Chinese community in that contest. It noted that Trudeau Jr. personally went to seek votes at a Chinese supermarket in Markham, an area of Toronto where Chinese people live, demonstrating that Chinese votes play an important role in the general election. The report, published by a United Front-linked organization, ACF-ROC, ROC, also emphasized the key role of WeChat, that's the Chinese version of Facebook, in rallying voters. It said 41 federal election candidates seen as of special interest to Beijing were nominated by different parties in the 2019 race, an increase from only 27 and 23 in 2015 and 2011. Charles Burton, a respected China expert and Mandarin language analyst, reviewed the report for the Bureau. He said the document identifies 41 distinguished Chinese candidates nominated in 2019, so I judge the use of distinguished implies identification of candidates potentially useful to China's aims. That's not all. Look, here's Garnet Genus. He is a conservative candidate in Alberta. He's been an MP for years. Now he's a candidate. You can't call him an MP. Listen to what he says here about the Eurasia Group.
In a rough couple days for Mark Carney, Liberal leader. The whole core Liberal argument in this campaign so far has been that they will stand up for Canada against the threats from south of the border. That's their claim. Yet it's come out from a group called Eurasia Group that well-connected senior Liberals are quietly talking about capitulation right after the election, when they no longer need your vote. Now, the Eurasia Group is a political risk consultancy. Their whole business is projecting future events, and of course they cultivate a network of contacts and monitor information in order to be able to do that. The Eurasia Group is very closely connected with senior Liberals. Mark Carney's wife works there. Star candidate for the Liberals, Evan Solomon, worked there until very recently. Gerald Butts works there, who is a big supporter of Carney's and was a senior advisor to Justin Trudeau. So very close connection between the Eurasia Group and the Liberals. The Eurasia Group's core business is projecting future events, and the head of the Eurasia Group wrote publicly that he's expecting capitulation right after the election. So this is the effective admission of what would likely come if Liberals were reelected. Liberals don't deserve a fourth term. You have seen enough of Liberals saying one thing during an election and doing the opposite afterwards. And this just completely undermines so many of the claims they've been making. A strong, conservative, common sense government will stand up for Canada against any threats, any pressures from outside or inside.
Interesting. We don't know if Genus is saying this as a campaign tactic or if he's actually hearing rumblings that, and maybe he is, because there was like I said, that cabinet meeting earlier today. Well, let's just knuckle under. Maybe they said that. Maybe he heard that. Maybe that's why he decided to put that video out. They're going to capitulate to whatever Trump wants, but they're going to wait until after the election is over because that's what they're riding on. Wow. That's insane. Oh, did you know that the government spent over $40 billion of our dollars? We reported this a couple of weeks ago without any kind of parliamentary oversight whatsoever. The Governor General just rubber stamped it and it's out there. We don't know exactly where it went. Here's the Blender guy with more info.
Just crossed a line no democracy should ever even approach, and almost nobody noticed. On April 1st, 2025, the Governor General of Canada quietly authorized a staggering $40,343,209,650 in government spending under a special warrant. The justification? That the sums were urgently required for the public good. No vote, no debate, no breakdown of where the money is going, just a vague schedule listing departments and totals. Canadians weren't consulted, Parliament wasn't consulted. The money simply vanished from the Consolidated Revenue Fund, rubber-stamped by an unelected Governor General at the request of a Liberal government that's been ducking accountability for months. Let's rewind. Parliament has been shut down since October. Why? Because Justin Trudeau was facing a scandal over the so-called Green Slush Fund. A massive pile of taxpayer money, amounting to over $300 million, was looted by Liberal insiders. When questions began circling, Trudeau froze Parliament to avoid investigation. Then they conveniently broke for Christmas, giving themselves another month break from facing the consequences of their corruption. When Parliament was finally set to return, Trudeau prorogued it, this time to dodge a looming confidence vote that would have toppled his government under the weight of scandal. The official excuse? A leadership transition. In reality, the Liberals were in disarray and needed to install Mark Carney as Prime Minister without facing the Democratic consequences. Carney wasn't elected by the public, he was appointed through a manipulated party leadership race with just 150,000 Liberal members, 0.4% of the Canadian population. Independent candidates like Ruby Dalla were barred from running. The race was a sham designed to preserve power, not serve Canadians. Now, under Carney, it's the same cabinet, the same corruption, and the same incompetence. Marco Mendicino, who not only botched the Bernardo prison scandal, but also knew about the Chinese Communist Party manipulating our elections and chose to do nothing, is now serving as Carney's chief of staff. Meanwhile, this incomprehensibly corrupt regime just handed itself over $40 billion in new spending behind closed doors. With Parliament still prorogued, there was no democratic process, just a signature from an unelected Liberal-appointed Governor-General acting on the advice of a government that's been ruling without oversight for half a year.
How is that even possible when they're supposed to be in caretaker mode? And they've been in caretaker mode, allegedly, since Parliament was prorogued on January 6th, and they're still spending billions of our dollars. Remember that our budget blew past its limits when they came out with that financial statement in December, I think by $20 billion. But they can still find $40 billion to spend somehow. That's incredible to me. And yet the media, crickets. Absolute crickets. Okay, let's talk about media suppression here. Media actually trying to suppress public sentiment. Yesterday and the day before, CBC and CTV released stories about Western separation. This is obviously the CBC story. And the headline says it all. 1 in 4 Albertans would vote to separate in a referendum, Angus Reid poll suggests. Now, this comes on the heels, I suppose, of Preston Manning's editorial in the National Post about a week ago now that says, if Eastern Canada, Ontario, Quebec, Maritimes, all decide they want to vote for Mark Carney and put another Liberal government in, you are playing with fire. You're talking about a huge national unity crisis. That's what he said. And I believe there are millions of people who absolutely agree with him. Absolutely agree with him. So the media is trying to tamp that down by saying 1 in 4 Albertans would vote to separate in a referendum. No big deal. They need 2 in 4. They need 50.1%. So no big deal. Don't worry about it. We're not even going to bother reading this article. We're just going to go to the next one. Came out the very same day. Interesting that CBC and CTV would choose to publish articles of the same kind of information on the same day, considering that it's a puff piece, it's a filler piece, it's not news per se. But yet the CBC and CTV, the two leading, allegedly, news organizations in Canada, are reporting this on the very same day. Western separation's unlikely, Alberta political scientist says. Here's what might happen instead. So let's go through this one here. Not long ago, the 2025 election seemed like Pierre Poilievre's to lose. That's made the rapid ascension of Mark Carney's Liberals in public approval polling a source of some frustration across the conservative-leaning prairies. And for the first time in years, the notion of Western separation appears to be gaining significant traction in both Alberta and Saskatchewan. Appears to be, they say. But how likely is Canada to see an actual secession movement should the Liberals form another government? In a recent op-ed for the Globe and Mail, Preston Manning, former opposition leader under the Reform Party, argued a vote for Carney is a vote for the breakup of Canada as we know it, and I would tend to agree with that. But Political science professor John Sirosky of Edmonton's MacEwan University. Make sure he's a Western academic for this story. Make sure you get somebody from the West. He disagrees, this John Sirosky, suggesting would-be separatists should not hold their breath. Well, that's kind of an imaginary, utopian, optimistic vision, Sirosky said Wednesday in an interview with CTV's Your Morning. I don't think the numbers are there. Now, that may be. But why would CTV publish a story like this when he says, I don't think the numbers are there? 33% of Saskatchewan residents and 30% of Alberta residents would vote in favor of separation right now. Whether to form their own country or join the United States, the vast majority of respondents said they would rather remain Canadian, however, a major hurdle for separatists under the secession roadmap set out in the Clarity Act. So what they're saying to you with these stories is that there's no chance of Alberta or Saskatchewan ever seceding from Confederation. So if you think for a second there's a chance, I wouldn't bother with it. It'll be a complete waste of your time. And they get some old academic to come in and say, yeah, there's not much of a chance of that happening. And this is all designed to quell any kind of sovereignist ideas that regular normie people might get when they hear people coming around their doors like Chris Scott or Jeff Rath saying, you know what, Alberta would be way better off without the rest of Canada. Way better off. And here's why. And they've got a long list of reasons. But what they're trying to do is make sure the normies out there don't want to hear them. That's exactly what that story is for. And it's the same with this story here from CTV when they say from James Moore, leaders' debates have come to mean less and less. Are you freaking kidding me right now? In my personal opinion, everything rides on the debates that are coming up in the next week and a half. Everything. For the first time, Canadians, and they don't know Mark Carney. They don't know who he is. They know he's a banker. They know he worked for the Bank of Canada as the governor. They know he was the governor of the Bank of England. They know he's worked for the UN, but they don't know anything about him. Not really. He's been away from the country for 20 years. Leaders' debates have come to mean less and less. In other words, don't even bother watching it. It doesn't matter. I mean, all they're going to do is be bickering and arguing up there. It's not really anything that you need to watch in order to decide who to vote for. James Moore is a former federal cabinet minister under Stephen Harper and a columnist for CTV. Do leaders' debates matter? Will these coming debates matter? Yes, but no. But the article doesn't matter in and of itself. Anything this guy wrote underneath this headline doesn't matter because people are going to say, and they're already not politically inclined in Canada. How many times have you heard the media come out and say, oh, we don't want to have to drag you to the polls again. Canadians don't want another election. Man, what's the matter with them? We have been screaming for this election now for the past 3 years or more. We don't want another election. We have to vote again. Oh, my God. What a hassle. Leaders' debates have come to mean less and less and less. Don't worry. Don't bother watching the debate. You're not going to learn anything new. You're not going to see who presents himself as the better leader to take Canada into the next decade or the last part of this decade, whatever. It's crazy. Meanwhile, in the United States, they love voting down there in the United States. They vote every couple of years for the House of Representatives. They're voting for their dog catcher down there, for goodness sakes. And the U.S. Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, came out with something absolutely jaw-dropping yesterday.
Long list of things that we're investigating. We have the best of the best going after this. Election integrity being one of them. We have evidence of how these electronic voting systems have been vulnerable to hackers for a very long time and vulnerable to exploitation to manipulate the results of the votes being cast. which further drives forward your mandate to bring about paper ballots across the country so that voters can have faith in the integrity of our elections.
Okay, so you see, this is the difference between the United States and Canada when it comes to elections, federal ones anyway. In provincial elections, I believe they use voting machines, and the same with municipal elections. And even with party elections, they use voting tabulators. But when it comes to federal elections in Canada, we use pen, paper, and we write our X down in the box, and then we stuff it in the box. You guys have all done that. You've all voted before, right? So they're all counted by hand. There's scrutineers watching these people counting the votes. There's scrutineers watching the scrutineers. You cannot cheat in a Canadian federal election, not with the voting process. So this is how they're doing it. They're using suppression polls. There is no way, I'm sorry, but there is no way on God's green earth that the Liberals jump 25 points in a month. It just doesn't happen like that, especially when you're bringing in somebody like Mark Carney with all those scandals hanging off him already. Canadians are tired of the Liberal scandals. They've been plagued by them for 10 years. They don't want any more scandals. Or maybe they're just immune to them by now. I don't know. There's people out there, obviously, who will vote Liberal, but 45% of Canadians? Not a chance. So the polls are suppressive. The news stories are suppressive. They don't want you engaged in any kind of Western separation talk at all. Come to think of it, they don't want you engaged in the election. Don't watch the debate. They don't mean anything anyway. That's what the media is doing. And I think that's probably because the media knows that everything that they're doing out is fake, fake, fake. What they don't know is that we know. Do not listen to the polls. That's CBC's story about the size of the crowds at these rallies. Same thing, suppression, suppression, suppression. Stay home. These crowds aren't that big. Don't worry about it. Stay home. One more American story before we wrap up for the night, and we go to the extension on shadowdavis.com. It's part 7 of Europa, The Last Battle Tonight. Pete Hegseth. Let me bring this up here. Pete Hegseth, he is the Secretary of Defense in the United States, says the U.S. partnering with Panama to secure the canal and deter China. So while Canada partners with China, well, Canada allows infiltration with China. Well, Canada's prime minister denies that there's any kind of Chinese manipulation. The United States are actually saying no to China. Remember the tariffs they've slapped on them? China's slapped tariffs back on the United States, but so what? Trump doesn't care about that. He's targeted China. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth today, well, this is a couple days ago, announced an expanded partnership between the U.S. and Panama to secure the Panama Canal in order to counter China's maligned influence in the region. The era of capitulating to coercion by the communist Chinese is over, Hegseth said while delivering prepared remarks earlier in the day. China's growing and adversarial control of strategic land and critical infrastructure in this hemisphere cannot and will not stand, he added. Hegseth, who has been in Panama City for a 3-day security conference, excuse me, with the host nation, later made the expanded partnership announcement during a joint press conference with Panamanian Public Security Minister Frank Abrego. The Panama Canal is key terrain that must be secured by Panama with America, not with China. The extension is coming up in just a couple of minutes. If you're in the Yorkton area, don't forget to visit the Spring Expo there. Go check out Canada Nano Silver. They're there from 10 a.m. until 7 p.m. tomorrow, and then from noon to 7 on Sunday. They would love to see you, meet you, shake your hand, pick up any product from Canada Nano Silver, and you will be entered in a draw to win a basket of goodies from CanadaNanoSilver.com. Again, that is at the Yorkton Spring Fair tomorrow and Sunday. I love you all, and I appreciate you all. And I will catch you guys Monday night at 8 o'clock Central for another Shadow at Night live stream. The extension for all access members at shadowdavis.com begins in 2 minutes. And I also have a surprise for you guys back there. I'll be back in just a second.